Serving on a non-profit board is about advancing the mission, and it's also about protecting the money that makes that mission possible. When Washington state grant funds are restricted, that responsibility becomes very specific. The duty of care means showing up prepared, asking informed questions, and using sound judgment before your organization spends or claims restricted grant dollars. With many Washington state grants, reimbursement comes after eligible costs are incurred. That means cash flow matters. Boards should understand whether the organization can carry costs before reimbursement arrives. Care also means tracking milestones. If a grant requires progress before funds are released, the board's job is to know what those trigger points are and whether management is positioned to meet them. Let's say staff plans to launch a grant-funded program next month, but a required subcontract is still unsigned. A careful board doesn't draft the contract itself, but it does ask whether that delay puts reimbursement or performance at risk. The same is true for match commitments. If the award depends on local matching funds, pledges, or in-kind support, the board should verify that the match is realistic, documented, and aligned with the grant terms. Risk ratings matter too. If an agency identifies your organization as higher risk, that can mean more reporting, tighter controls, or closer monitoring. Boards should expect to hear about that early, not after a problem grows. And then there's documentation. Financial records, support for reimbursement requests, and grant compliance files may need to be retained for 6 years. Without records, even proper spending can become hard to defend. So in practice, duty of care means the board asks whether the systems, timelines, cash position, and documentation are strong enough for restricted public funds, while staff carries out the daily work. The duty of loyalty means board members put the organization's interests ahead of personal relationships, business interests, or convenience, especially when grant money is involved. Conflicts of interest are not always misconduct. The real test is whether they are disclosed early, documented clearly, and handled through policy before decisions are made. That matters even more with related party transactions. If a board member's company, family member, or close associate could benefit from a grant-funded contract, the board has to slow down and follow the rules. Here's what a compliance scenario looks like. A board member discloses that their sibling owns a vendor being considered for a grant-funded service, leaves the discussion, and does not vote. Now compare that with a non-compliant version. The relationship is mentioned casually after the meeting, no recusal is recorded, and the contract moves forward without policy review. Loyalty also means using the same procurement standards and approval logic you would use with any public-facing decision. Restricted grant dollars should never look like private discretion. For the board, the practical discipline is simple: disclose, recuse, document. Then let the organization apply its conflict and purchasing policies consistently. The duty of obedience means following the non-profit's mission, its governing documents, and the legal restrictions attached to the grant itself. With restricted funds, purpose matters. If a state grant is awarded for a defined program, those dollars cannot quietly absorb unrelated expenses, even if the broader mission is worthy. Restricted money must follow restricted purpose. That is one reason commingling is so risky. When restricted and unrestricted funds blur together, it becomes harder to prove what was spent, what was matched, and what remains available. Let's say staff uses a general operating account for convenience, then tries to reconstruct the grant charges later. The board should not rebuild the ledger, but it should ask whether fund tracking is reliable enough to support certification. Obedience also includes delivering any promised match in the form and timeframe the grant requires. A match delayed, overstated, or poorly documented can undermine the whole award. And when reimbursement requests or compliance certifications go out, the board needs confidence that the people signing them are authorized and supported by accurate internal controls. In short, duty of obedience means the board keeps asking one core question: are we using, tracking, and certifying these public funds exactly the way the grant requires? This is where many boards need the most clarity. Good governance is active, but it is not the same as day-to-day grant administration. Staff does the operational work. They prepare reimbursement requests, maintain support files, manage reporting calendars, coordinate vendors, and implement internal controls. The board does something different. It approves policy, reviews financial and compliance reports, asks about risk, and makes sure leadership has the capacity to manage the award responsibly. So, when a board member starts rewriting grant budgets, negotiating vendor details, or directing reimbursement paperwork, the line has started to blur. A healthier pattern sounds like this. Staff says where performance stands, what risks are emerging, and what decisions need governance support. Then the board asks whether policies were followed, whether restricted funds are protected, whether match commitments remain credible, and whether corrective action is needed. In other words, staff does the work. The board asks the oversight questions that keep the work aligned, lawful, and sustainable. When that division is respected, the organisation gets the best of both worlds: strong execution from staff and strong accountability from the board. That split is not distance, it's discipline. And with restricted public funds, that discipline protects the organisation, the people doing the work, and the community you serve. When board members practice care, loyalty, and obedience, they do more than meet a legal standard. They protect the organisation, support staff, and safeguard public trust in the mission. In the next lesson, we'll build on this foundation and look at how boards can review grant reports and financial signals with confidence. Thanks for being part of that work. We'll see you in the next lesson. Your board role matters. And your oversight does too. Thank you for helping protect every restricted dollar with purpose.